Hello, and thanks for joining us at Ride On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the re-release of the Revell Porsche 914-6 2-in-1 model kit number 85-4378 in 1/25th scale. Revell lists this as a skill level 3 for moderate builders, as it requires glue and paint. The kit itself has seen multiple releases, and it has 97 parts molded in white, chrome, clear, and vinyl tires with water slide decals and a book-style instruction sheet. The chassis is solid, motor simplistic, and the interior details are basic. The basic body is a multi-part system that has to be painted prior to assembly, and the decal sheet is an excellent selection of stock and race decals, plus plenty of details to make your build stand out. Now remember, it's a 40-year-old kit, so it's not up to today's standards, but if you take your time, she'll look great on the shelf when you're finished. Overall, it is 6 1/4 inches long, 2 3/4 inches wide, and 2 inches high. Here are the decals for this build, with 3 different color Porsche stripes for just about any color you'd want to use. You also notice that the color registry is very good, and the color depth is good too. These decals float pretty well, but I still recommend using a setting solution to make sure that they conform to detail and stick to the body of the car. Remember to use the manufacturer's safety suggestions to use any of the products you see here. For most parts, I use some Model Master liquid cement and Tamiya acrylic bottle paints, but sometimes for strength I use super glue, and for clear window parts I use some white glue or clear cement. To start the build, gather the parts for the motor, and we'll begin there. Paint the top of the motor and the bottom steel color. The belt is painted a rubber color, and the hoses and pulleys are a flat black. Then the transmission is assembled and painted aluminum with a steel mount. Now insert the top half into the bottom half of the motor. It just sits there with no motor mounts, and attach the transmission to that. Gather up the parts for the rear brakes and paint the shocks red and black. Assemble the brakes and paint those steel. The spindles are semi-gloss black. Then attach the brakes and shocks. As the copyright suggests, this is from a 1988 mold design, so the arrows point out all the injection pin marks that you'll need to repair, and the copyright script that will need to be removed if you're going to make a contest model out of this build. Paint the chassis pan flat black and spray the area of the open deck lid and engine compartment body color. Install the motor into place into the engine bay from underneath, and at that point you can insert the axles into the transmissions and then add the rear suspension to each side. Now I use some super glue for this for strength. Paint the struts for the front end red and black like the ones in the rear, and then assemble the brakes and paint those steel. Now attach the brakes to the struts. The tires are non-directional and all the same size, and they can be put at any location on the car, and the rims are the same. So for stock, just leave them chrome, and for a race model, just refer to reference photos or and paint the recessed areas black. For the race rims, I painted mine aluminum and steel. You can give your tires a worn look by rubbing the tread against some fine grit sandpaper, and you'll notice here after you put the rims into the tires that they're a little shallow. Actually, the tires are too fat for these rims, but you'll have to just adjust them for width and dimension and make them look as good as you can there. Now you can see by the arrow that it's a little too deep. Paint the front A-arms semi-gloss black and install the struts and the A-arms in the front. To add the tires and to adjust for them being a little bit too wide, I slid the rim onto the brakes until the tire kind of fits in the proper location, and then I super glued them into place on the wheel backs. Now paint the shift linkage semi-gloss black. Now add the linkage to the transmission and the bracket area in the rear, then install the rear tires the same way as we did on the fronts. Here's the completed underside as seen from overhead. We'll be adding the carbs to the motor next. I added a little black wash to the chrome carbs to give them a little definition. Now, as you see here, there's also the air cleaner that you would use for the stock version. For the interior, you need to choose between the stock and race version parts, so gather those at this time and pick the ones you want to use. Install the seat and add the pedals to the firewall, then paint the interior parts flat black. Fire extinguisher is red with aluminum fittings, and the shifter has a black boot and grip, and the brake has a black handle. Now install the interior onto the body pan. The engine bay and door panels get added next. The engine cowl is 3 parts with an added vent for the race version. Assemble and paint it body color or semi-gloss black, and the rear engine panel is body color. The door panels are black with silver handles and trim fittings, and there's an extra vent for the interior on the stock version. Install the engine cowl over the engine, shown here in body color, then install the interior door panels and the rear panel with the Porsche decal on it. Paint the dash and column flat black and add the instrument decals. Then choose the wheel and paint it flat black, depending on whether you use the stock or race versions. Add the 3 gauge decals for the instrument panel, and then assemble the dash, the column, and the wheel, and add the horn button decal as well. The red circle here indicates the stock version parts you would need for this next section, but otherwise set them aside for the race version because it is a monotone color, and the chrome is actually stripped off the bumpers or sanded off and installed prior to painting. You'll see evidence of an old mold here, as the car has lots of flash and mold lines that need attention and cleaning up prior to painting. I used an X-Acto blade to strip off most of the flash and then some sanding sticks to carefully clean up all of the part. You'll also notice poor fit, especially at the front end, where you may need to do some filling and finishing. After you've gotten the body cleaned up, use a good quality primer to cover the body completely on the inside and outside. I sprayed the panels that you see in the last shot with some of this Gravity Colors Chevrolet Velocity Yellow, paint number 152. It's a 2-stage paint, so it'll need a clear coat after this as well. Choose the decals of your choice for your body build and use the larger ones first, but I recommend using some setting solution to help keep those on the body contours and keep them in place. Install the dash onto the inside of the body from underneath. Slide the chassis into place into the body and line it up flush with the edges indicated by the red arrows here. I used a little super glue to keep it in place. The window glass comes in 2 versions, both stock and race, and I find that using this Pledge floor care to dip it into and let it dry off really makes the glass look clear and crisp. Install the window glass into place using some white glue or some clear part cement. As I said, I used the race version, so I also installed the tachometer at the top and the windshield here now. Install the headlight covers and black out the vents, and this front end is already complete. Gather these parts for the rear end. I actually ran into some trouble here and had to remove the hood hinges from the rear deck lid in order for it to fit in. But I paint the tail lights transparent orange and transparent red and install them into place and use some super glue to glue the bumper onto the car. Once again, you need to make a choice of either stock or race exhaust. I chose the race and just paint the manifold steel and install those into place, and we're coming up to the end of our build. Assemble the exhaust tube halves together and add those to the manifolds. In this kit, you had a choice of 2 different complete versions, so there'll be extra parts when you're finished. This is a great modeling subject, and with a little bit of elbow grease, she can look to be a great shelf model, but we can't sugarcoat it. There are a lot of fit issues and flash issues that need to be worked on and cleaned up to make this really look good. It's a nice model when it's completely built because there are hardly any scale versions of this kit. I thought it was a really great looking model, especially in the race version, but it's a matter of taste, and I would not recommend this for an inexperienced builder. Well, with some extra elbow grease and work, she could look just great on your shelf too. We hope you've enjoyed this review and step-by-step build. But if you don't want to miss any future issues, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and also on the web at www.rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.